G'day class users, Chris DeBro from the NACLAC class team. Big announcement, we now have geolocation up and running, and I'm going to tell you all about what this geolocation and geotagging business is. What geolocation is, it just gives us a whole bunch of enhanced ways of analysing our client service data and breaks it down into a whole bunch of new regions, which I'll show you the list of in a second. But basically how it works is we have, at the time a new service is saved, class will look across to the client, take the address and stamp the service with it, and then look it up on a new database that's in the class system, sort of a side database based on what's called the GNAF data set, which is a big data set that's continually kept up to date, and all state, territory and federal governments feed in all the addresses, and it'll basically validate that address to the best of its ability. It will then push it across to the ABS administrative boundary data set, a third database that's all connected inside class, and then allocate all the administrative boundaries. So a bunch of different sort of databases work together to make this happen, and that'll return those administrative boundaries of where that service was delivered, essentially, for our reporting purposes. So let's take a look at how that works in real life. Over here in class, the majority of work is found here in reports, and I'm going to show you some of the reports and how it deals with it. But before I do, I want to take you back over to the online guide and show you where it's all at and how you can find out about it. So over here under reporting and accountability is where you'll find it, and we'll see the geocoding and geolocation. Note I'm just clicking on the little side triangles. If we click on the main page there, we have the overview and explains in more detail and gives us the first of the list of the kinds of things that you'll be able to now filter by. So it includes suburbs, postcodes, SA1s and 2s, which are from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, local government areas, LGAs, so your local government divisions, and state and Commonwealth electoral divisions, as well as some various Indigenous locators and the remoteness area, which is one of our ways we evaluate what a priority client is. So this documentation walks you through the steps in a little bit more detail, and also explains down here the administrative boundaries, where they come from and how they're worked, of interest. For example, postcodes actually come from Australia Post. The suburbs come from GNAF. Most of the other ones come from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and basically we'll keep that up to date as these various bodies change those boundaries, etc. So another big issue about how geocoding works is essentially what happens if you don't have a full address. We can find the geotagging rules. I'll probably pull this out so it's its own chapter here, and essentially this goes through the examples of how that works, where the address validation system works. So essentially what happens if we don't have a street number, it'll shoot to the kind of the average of around that street. If we don't have the street name, it'll shoot up the scale to a suburb and give you an average kind of position where that suburb is, or postcode, etc. And the reason we do this is so we don't get a zero when we're getting a report. We need to maintain an average, even if that really literally just plonks them in the middle of the state, or at times these reports will just say unknown. So if you're going down to great detail like an SA1 or some statistical area that's very small, it'll just say unknown, but add it to the count and you won't lose it. So in other words, there's not a problem for people that don't record full addresses or have transient clients where it's sort of, vague where they actually are. The idea is you get the best detail you can, and the system will average out the rest for the purpose of this geolocation reporting. So how does it work in class? Well, we're in the reports page, as I mentioned. A good example would be CO3, the clients by priority group. A lot of people are now using this report quite regularly because it gives us a bunch of different filters and demographic filters. We'll just give an example of, say, the last month, and I'll just select the funding categories for everything, and where it's found is not under the demographic but rather under catchment, and here we have aggregate by administrative boundary. So that's the one you want to pick, and now we get to choose the areas that I've just mentioned. For example, if we wanted, say, Commonwealth electoral divisions, now here's a little tricky bit. You can actually just select a particular division if you wanted to, but if you leave this blank, and this is the same rule for all these administrative boundary types, you will get all of them. In this case, we have a client report. You get all clients. In other words, all the boundaries of Commonwealth electoral divisions will show up. So I'll show you what that means by clicking load a report. And we can see it's pulled up. Because we've got more information on this particular filter about demographic things I haven't actually used, you'll find most of the work turns up on page 2 and beyond. And here we are. So if I drill into like 150%, you'll see a breakdown by, in this case, the Commonwealth electoral divisions for this area. So I can take one of these actual electoral divisions, as long as it's spelt right or the IC code is exact. You need to be careful there. I'm going to put something like that in there and load the report again. And we can see now, if we scroll to the next page, that we've only got the actual single one. So if you're just trying to drill into a particular area, say it's one of your electoral divisions or local government areas that or need to provide, then you can do so. But if you're not sure the name or the code, just do the first time without it and you'll be able to see what is actually available. Now I wanted to show you another thing that's happening. The outer regional remote clients, that's a priority client division, and that is actually taken from the geolocation as well. So that is now up and running, particularly in your CO1, CO3s. A lot of people have been waiting for that one. Now, another place you can find, if you want to find out what is actually you're looking at, is we can actually look it up on there. There's an ABS service. I just do a Google search for ABS map. There's also another one called the National Map, which is really cool too. One of the really good boundary types is the SA1, particularly the SA2s, because there's a lot of other data like criminal data and things, ABS data that you can find in National Map. You just got to make sure that you've got the year of the data exactly the same, because sometimes the National Map is just a little bit behind, like a version behind. We're up to date, so you're going to have the latest from the class reports, and we will endeavour obviously to keep it as up to date as possible when we get new releases of this data. But this map, if you click on it, it's called ABS Maps. You can actually put in your data type. So 2016 is the latest one, and I can, for example, just plug in the SA2s and then say drill into an area. I'm just double clicking. In this case, it sort of works like Google Maps. You'd be familiar with it, and you can see the suburb breakdown of statistical area 2, and I can actually click on that one of them and it actually gives us the name that you'll need. You could say search for Strathfield, so this way you'll be able to find, for example, an address or things like that you can look up, or if you need the code as well, which can be very useful, and find your kind of regions, and you'll be able to do that for multiple statistical area types. So you can actually go and find your Indigenous regions areas. We're all there, and you should be able to find your local government areas and Commonwealth electoral and state electoral divisions, etc. And so it's a good way to sort of dig around and find things like that. So there's various things you can do to check what's going on, or perhaps want to find which boundary code you want to find. Also, funders, we know, sometimes need, say, a breakdown by suburb or postcode, so you'll get that breakdown and the borders and things like that should be correct. So they're the basics on how it works. There's some very powerful things when you export this stuff, and you will be able to use it and create heat maps and things like that of services in various areas. We're going to tell you more about that in more detail coming up to the 2008 National Conference. So that's pretty exciting kind of process stuff as well. So I will leave it there. Christopher signing off.